An incredible documentary. Can you all hear me okay? Sound good? You know, I just want to thank Congresswoman Barbara Lee for everything she's done. You know, we talk a lot about sustainability nowadays to the point where it's kind of like a buzzword, but this is what you call sustainability. This is what you call consistent work that does not stop, that fulfills itself, that fulfills others. That's what Congresswoman Lee has done. And congratulations to Abby Ginsburg. She has added yet another wonderful documentary to her well-established record of over 30 years. So we're going to unpack this film a little bit more and talk about the path to inclusivity. I am pleased to introduce our panelist, Congresswoman Barbara Lee. What an honor to be in her presence. Where's your energy level right now, everyone? Are we on 10? Absolutely. I'd like to introduce Abby Ginsburg, award-winning director and producer. She's the one to put all that together. Just seamless. And Glenda Carr, President, CEO, and co-founder of Higher Heights for America. Glenda. Thank you, ladies, for joining me on stage. Was it okay? We're okay. Everyone has their mics? Okay. So we're going to go through and ask several questions, and I'll just tell you before I get started, every time I watch this, I'm just so inspired. And I suspect that I'm like many of you. You know, I have family members that have been incarcerated and have had trouble after incarceration. I lost my uncle to AIDS. I have family members that struggle every day to take care of their families. And to know that you have someone that is really fighting and truly understands all of the things that we have the opportunity to improve, it's just phenomenal. So Congresswoman Lee, there was a comment in the documentary about how those closest to the pain should be closest to the power. So when creating policy, you understand this. And you were on government assistance as a single mom raising 2 boys. You felt the stings of racism, inequality, and inequity. How do you use your lived experience every day to push the way you create change?
Well, first of all, it's really wonderful to be here, and I want to thank everyone, thank the African American Film Festival, and Fred, and Stephanie, and Calvin, and Glenda, and Abby for this moment. And I think, what's wrong?
Testing one.
I think, it's open, yeah.
That works.
That it's hard for me personally, and I've shared this before because I'm such a private person, and I'm a Cancer, and you know cancers like to stay in their shells. And so for some, I think as a child, though I learned from my mother the lessons of racism and the impact of racism and sexism on our lives, and feel like I have no option but to do the work. But using personal experiences really has been very difficult for me. I wrote my memoirs in 2008. That was one moment where I was able to share a little bit. Then, of course, Abby insisted to violate some of my privacy. And then I realized, and with Lynn Woolsey in the film, you know, she said, you've got to share your experiences. I was doing the work, but I never talked about why. or what I knew or how I had lived a lot of what I was dealing with. And so I'm still evolving on that because I still have difficulty talking about personal aspects of my life. But I see, and Ayana's very instrumental in helping me work through this in terms of, the person closest to the pain should be the people, closest to the power. And that is so true, because how in the world would these very wealthy white guys, for example, understand the struggles of low-income poor people, black, white, brown? They just don't get it because they haven't had those lived experiences. So when we show up, the dynamic changes, and we're credible when we put forth our arguments and put forth a rationale for why we're going to do what we do to make things better. So it's something that I hope everybody, those of you who don't like to share your experiences, wherever you are in whatever space you're in, try to open up a little bit. I'll close by saying this. Dr. Maya Angelou, she asked me to come down to North Carolina to talk with her once. And I shared that about myself, and she insisted that I stop being as private as I was. She insisted that I start sharing some of my experiences and some of my life with others. And she was really probably one of the first persons who got me to start thinking about that. And I loved her dearly.
It's a wonderful point. I was the same way, and I think many of us probably have been, depending particularly on what environments we're in. And one thing I find is sharing about yourself really unlocks your energy in a way that it can't be unlocked if you're not sharing that piece of what motivates you. So thank you for that. Abby, you decided to produce and direct this wonderful documentary. And as Congresswoman Lee has said, it's all you. What inspired you? What inspired you to want to tell this story?
So I of course, now know Barbara much better than I did when I started this film. But Barbara has inspired me as a constituent all these years. Some of the themes that are in the film are things that I kind of brought to my idea behind the film, like her relationship to her constituents. Like when Elihu Harris says, people think of her as a friend as well as a congresswoman. You know what I mean? There's a level of warmth and an interaction that we all of us constituents feel with her. But the reason I wanted to make this film, I actually want to ask the audience a question. How many of you came here never knowing anything about Barbara Lee? Okay, that's why I made the film. You know what I mean? And there are hundreds of others out there in the world that would be true of as well. So I really made the film because I felt within Barbara, and this was also before the 2018 election, so there were not a lot of, the Ayanna Presleys of the world were not yet in Congress. And I really felt like Barbara set the bar high for what being, the kind of congresswoman I wanted to be represented by was. And so I felt like there is this great woman who I felt like I could tell her story if she would let me. So the much bigger problem was not what was in Barbara's story, what was I going to do with it. The big problem was my subject, who was like, why would you want to seriously, why would you want to make a film about me? Why? Look at what I put up on the screen. That's why I wanted to make a film. And this has actually happened to me with other films that have been in this festival, where people are like, well, I guess you can, but I don't know why anybody would want to watch it. So I think what I actually bring to the table is, by identifying people who inspire me and having kind of an idea of how I can use that story to inspire others, I'm onto something. I don't exactly know what the journey's going to be. I don't exactly know what the film is going to turn out like, but my instincts are good. That I am going to find, the nuggets of gold that need to be shared. And so, again, I feel like, let me just say this. I feel like the film answers the question of why I made the movie, because wouldn't you all want to know about somebody who works this hard, fights this, fiercely, and has a moral center that cannot be swayed by the politics of the moment.
Yes.
I mean, that is what we want in our elected representatives. And I just was like really lucky that I had the right elected representative. And I got even luckier that she finally said yes.
It took her twice as long to do this film because I was an unwilling subject.
Oh, well, we are so glad that Abby was persistent. And because you said, you want more people to know about Congresswoman Lee, how might everyone that's here is going to want to go tell everyone about
Yes.
the film that we just watched. How might they do that?
Okay, so audience, there are a couple of things you can do. I'm going to even put on my glasses.
She's putting on her
I'm trying
glasses to
see
say
you.
this.
I'm putting on my glasses to see you. So the film gets a national release next Friday, which means that anybody in the country can watch it on Amazon Prime Friday, Saturday, Sunday, starting next week. So that is like huge. It's very hard to get these kind of national releases for a film, so I'm extremely grateful that we have it. But in order for you to be able to tell your friends about it, it would really help me if you'd sign my email list on the way out of here so that I can send you stuff that you can just forward. So it'll be on Amazon, it'll be on Apple iTunes, and it will also be in theaters in LA, the Bay Area, Columbus, Ohio, should anybody happen to be from Columbus, Ohio, and Boston.
Go Buckeyes.
Okay, we got any Boston people here? Because I'm going to Boston. I will be in Boston next Friday night at the Kendall Square Theater. So again, do me a favor, as you leave here, the sign-up sheet is on the table as you walk out the door. There are posters for you to take. In exchange for your signature, take a poster and tell everybody you know about this film. Because the last reason, why do I really care that this film gets seen? Because Barbara says it in the beginning, and it remains even truer today than the day she said it. Our democracy is at a brink, and we need to know that as a country, and we need to educate each other about that. And this film helps us focus a discussion on what it's going to take to save our democracy. And even though Joe Biden is president, we all saw what happened on January 6th. So we need to come together in community to fight to save our democracy and to support the fabulous people in Congress like Barbara Lee who are on the front lines. Okay? Enough said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Abby. And great people surround themselves with great people. And so Glenda is here with us this evening. Glenda, can you tell us about, your connection to the Congresswoman and the organization that you lead, Higher Heights for America, please?
Well, Barbara speaks for me, and she literally is the foundation of the next generation of Black women who lead. 10 years ago, I had coffee with a friend, Kimberly Pillar Allen, in the Brooklyn Cafe and started Higher Heights for America. We wrote the words down, Higher Heights, that day. And it was two girlfriends venting, because y'all know we can vent, about not seeing ourselves in the politics that we worked in. We were political operatives. She was a fundraiser. I was a chief of staff and a campaign manager. And we were like, why are we in rooms that are mostly male, mostly white, and mostly old? And we spent a year and a half having conversation. And our good friend, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, hosted a breakfast of then the 18 Black women that were elected and serving on the Hill. And Barbara Lee walked down to the CBCI house and had coffee with us. And the discussion there was, how do we grow this? This is a member of Congress that has literally, not only raised money for her reelection, but has also raised millions of dollars through her leadership PAC to help elect not only progressive candidates, but also to help elect other Black women. She certainly is part of the legacy of changing the face of leadership. The women of, the Black women of California have the roadmap. Congresswoman Barbara Lee was a community activist, an assembly member, a state senator, and a congressional member, and we don't know what's next. And so that is the history. She paved that pathway for Kamala Harris to serve on the local level, on the statewide executive level, on the federal level, and now in the White House. There are Black women across the country that we can build that blueprint. We are still severely underrepresented and underserved, and there's much more opportunities for us to use our lived experiences as Black women. And I think that is why it's important, Rep. Lee, that you told your story. And I love that it was a full circle story and you ended on the story of love. Because people don't believe that Black women are full, whole beings and that we work hard to save this democracy. in that it is sometimes at the sacrifice of our families, that we are being a single mom sitting at that decision-making table, a struggling mom sitting at this decision-making table, being the only ones at that decision-making table, that you bring the 23 million Black women in this country to that table, and you are literally the person that speaks for us. So thank you for your leadership.
I just have to say to Glenda how proud I am of you. When I first met you, I knew that Higher Heights was going to go somewhere, not sure where, but early on I said, look, I want to make sure we have a chapter in my district. And this woman has been so persistent and consistent in making sure that African American women had that new table, as Ayanna said, to sit at. And 10 years, I can't believe it's been that long, but I just think that you are the epitome of what a Black woman in this country can do. And you started with nothing, with no money, no nothing, and now she's on the national stage making sure that Black women are elected at all levels of government, organizing money, supporting candidates, just doing every single thing. And so I just want to give Glenda a round of applause, because I knew her when. And she's broken so many glass ceilings for so many.
And I should say the congressional members, I think 10 of the 18 at the time came to this breakfast, and Kimberly Pillar Allen, the other co-founder, and I were like, well, dag, they all here? And they were like, who are these two little girls, which we were grown, but then, two little girls coming down from New York. But they knew that there is a power in connecting Black women and our allies across the country to change the landscape. And there's been a lot of work and a lot of progress over the last 10 years, but there's still growth and opportunities. And like I said, she took the roadmap of a Shirley Chisholm, created her own roadmap, and that this is the blueprint of what does the next 10 years look like for us to change the face of leadership.
Yes.
Absolutely. And to have leaders like Glenda that are leading the way for Black women that want to rise and do good, make good trouble for our country is absolutely fantastic. And some of you watching the film may think that Congresswoman Lee just naturally had that skill. You have to work at that. And one of the things that's great is that what you're doing is helping women rise and do the work and really understand the impact that they can make, more proactively than Congresswoman Lee that you had to go through and build it more yourself. So Congresswoman Lee, you work to create a world that values diversity, equity, and inclusion, truly values it. And we know that can be challenging. And your film shows us the importance of persistence, and I was talking about that earlier. What is your advice on staying the course? And let's also talk about why is that so important? Because we often have people saying, well, do we have equality yet, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Thanks for that. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but I want to just read a couple of paragraphs of a letter that I wrote to Sherilyn Green, who was the senior editor of Essence magazine when Marcia Gillespie, I think, was the editor. January 3rd, 1978. Okay?
Just a few years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. For the past 2.5 years, wait a minute. I have worked, in Washington, D.C. for Congressman Ron Dellums as a senior staff assistant, as chief of staff. This job entails coordinating and supervising the congressman's Washington staff and a million other non-administrative tasks. For more background on myself, see enclosed resume. Okay. I am very concerned about the lack of Blacks and Black women in administrative, legislative, clerical, and intern positions on the Hill. It is a very racist and sexist branch of government, and it is a battle which has to be fought on many levels. Currently, the Urban League, Women's Political Caucus, and the ACLU have been involved in this issue. None have focused on Black women, and none have given a pragmatic plan of action for immediate results. One reason for the discrimination is that members of Congress conveniently exempted themselves from Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Now, I'm writing saying I want to write this article for Essence, right? The article which I propose to write would include the following areas: problem identification, basic statistics on Black women on Capitol Hill, overview of types of available jobs, qualifications needed for such positions. I'll do interviews with Congresswoman Chisholm, Burke, Curtis Collins, and Barbara Jordan, and our candidate Jan Watlington from the Virgin Islands. 5, political strategies for obtaining such jobs during the next Congress. Finally, I have never written an article for publication in a magazine and really don't know what the procedures, process, financial arrangements, timetables are. If you and Marcia are interested in this, please let me know, and I'd love to discuss it further with you. Happy New Year. Sincerely, Barbara Lee. That was January 3rd, 1978, okay? Now, can you believe that? January 3rd, what is today? 2021, August. So, but persistence, the issues, until we deal with the structures and the systems from its core in this country, we'll keep going and tinkering around the edges and keep revisiting a lot of the struggles that we've had to struggle with. Just this year, we were finally able to pass, just a couple of weeks ago in the appropriations bill, something that I worked on to provide paid interns with money to be able to provide for their housing and their food and their living arrangements while they're in Washington, D.C. We still haven't done that. So I'm still working on it, but hopefully we'll have more African American and students of color now on the Hill, because we will have created those opportunities with the support there for them to come to the Hill. But this was 78 when I was working on it. So, I mean, it just shows you, Glenda, how...
And it leads, directly into the work that Glenda is doing. And it's all about inclusion. It's about having people at the table, but including them in the change that needs to occur. And what's really interesting is that if you don't look at the detail, right? And that's part of the reason this takes so long. You have to look at the detail. Oh, we have interns. But how are those interns really doing, and are they going to feel like they're really welcome when they don't have...
And do they get there because they don't have the kind of resources that... And when I was there, I was probably one of a few African-American interns on the Hill, because I was able to send my kids to my mother-in-law to take care of them. And I just shut my house down. I got $1 an hour from work study at University of California to be an intern. I got there, and really, there were 4 or 5 African-American interns, and I'll never forget this. I went to the Senate. They had a big intern day. I looked around. There were very few Black interns, both Senate and House. We met with Senator Kennedy. Ron Brown was his assistant then, and I stood up and I said, "Where are the Black interns? Senator Kennedy, you've got to do something. We've got to meet with you." And all 5 of us met with him. Ron Brown initiated that meeting, facilitated it, and I love Ron Brown. He was a good friend of mine, and he was the one who helped begin the process of opening up the Hill to Black interns.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. And this idea of inclusion is one where it has to go both ways. And that was also, Abby, you highlighted that in the film. That has to go both ways. It's not just others including us. It's us including others. And when we talk about working on both sides of the aisle and how they talk about that, Congresswoman Lee has really demonstrated that ability, and that's about including others in the ideation, in the change that needs to be created, and it's bi-directional. So, Abby, I was wondering, you've been producing for over 30 years.
Yeah.
Award-winning films. And what has doing that taught you about inclusion and about the art's ability to amplify the voices of trailblazers?
Okay, so I started, my profiles, or whatever you want to call them, other films that are sort of a little bit in this genre, were about people who were not terribly well known. One was about an African-American judge named Felton Henderson from our district. The other was about a Latino judge named Cruz Reynoso. And Barbara, they fit a certain pattern, which I think is really important, which is none of these people were born with the expectation that they would achieve what they achieved. I mean, we're talking, Cruz Reynoso was one of 11 farm worker children. Felton Henderson's mother worked as a domestic servant, domestic worker in somebody else's house, and he was raised for a long time by his grandmother. And Barbara had, a tough start. So what I think it has taught me is that the value of showing where people come from, how they begin to chart a course for themselves, and often it is because a parent had some kind of faith that this child could really succeed. Felton's mother was like, "You're going to make it, and I am just going to stand behind you, and I'm going to watch it happen," and he did. But I think where art and the kind of the politics of inspiration come together my goal in making these films is to inspire someone else who doesn't know any Congress people, or doesn't know any federal judges, or has never thought about going even necessarily to college, to say, look at this journey. Look how unlikely it was for this person to get to where they got to, and look at the great good they did once they arrived. There is something in this for you to hold on to as either sort of a spark of inspiration or hope or whatever. And so I feel like, what I feel like I've been blessed by in my life is having met these people, to know enough about them that I knew their stories could inspire much younger African American or Latino kids back in the day, or young women who are coming up today who see Barbara's story and say, hell, maybe I can do this too. And then, they get training from Glinda, or they get training from Emerge or some other organization, because the people who are winning office are now part of, a feedback loop. I mean, so it's like they are putting themselves forward, and there are people who are going to help them get there. Barbara is one of them, but there are now organizations that didn't exist 20 years ago. We are really looking at how to build the bench. And I just feel like, people come to a film and you never quite know what it sparks. But I would hope that young African American women in high school will someday see this film and think about how it can inspire them. That's my goal for this film. And, the fact that there's maybe, some other moments in it that they like as well, but the goal is to inspire those who might never see themselves in the job, figuring out how to get there for themselves. That's what I feel. That's what I'm trying to do.
Absolutely. We have run out of time.
Oh.
So we have so much to talk about. Let me just say that the work that Higher Heights is doing, the work that you're doing, is inspiring inclusion in so many different ways, particularly in the political sphere. And I hope that all of you will spend some time understanding everything it takes to create the future that Glenda and Congresswoman Lee and Abby are trying to create. This is not small work. This is big work and really important work. Thank you so much to our panelists for this excellent discussion. You can go online to learn about the film at speakingtruththepowermovie.com. Yes, Abby?
Yes, speakingtruththepowermovie.com. Yes.
Speakingtruththepowermovie.com. And I'm here from General Motors, and so to learn more about what General Motors is doing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, please visit us at gm.com. And stop by the GM booth outside if you haven't done so already. And you can certainly pump up the hashtag GM at MVAAFF. We hope that everyone gets home or to your next destination very safely and with a little fun. Have a great night. Thank you.
Get a mask. Get a mask. Free mask.
Get a mask.
Get a mask. We have masks out there for you if you didn't get one when you came in.
Speaking
Thank you,
truth to power and
Congresswoman.
good
Thank you,
trouble.
Abby. Thank you, Glenda. And thank you, Telva.